BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions. Not sure if it's because I wanted to get a quick video for me to discuss, but on the topic of Beyblade, though I was considering talking about my feelings on X Season 2, I figured work on this one to give me more time for the Superman video quickly, but since the Toxicity video is doing surprisingly well, thanks for watching. It's mostly constructive for the most part. I just want to talk about the Metal Saga because as a series with the biggest hype and hype backlash, this has led to criticism that I feel is deserved, undeserved, and ones that aren't talked about as much. And since I'm anti-toxicity, I'm open to hearing otherwise. First, I did hear from some people that fans of the original series could be toxic to Metal fans, and I want to apologize on that front because maybe I wasn't that aware around when that discourse started, at least online. Because me and my friends personally didn't have a problem with it, like I said in the past video. But there is one point where I can see where they detract from people from entering as they continue to watch the Metal Saga, if they grew up on the original, and that's particularly how Metal handled its cast rotation. Because when you look at the original, Tyson, Kai, Max, Ray, and Kenny were always there as main characters, and it really only added Hillary, Hiro, and Daichi. Yes, you could argue in Season 3, when you look back at the episode, all of them still had their whole rivalry and breakup, so people like to blame Daichi for that, even though that would have happened regardless of his inclusion. So going from that to the Metal Saga, we've got Gingka, Kyoya, Benkei, Kenta, and Madoka as our leads. 4 bladers, 1 non-blader. Adds up, right? But then in Season 2, Kyoya and Benkei leave because Wildfang and Kenta's not a part of the tournament, but Tsubasa and Yu are fan favorites, so they got to join the team with the new character Masamune. Then in Season 3, the core 5 are united, but Yuki joins only for Benkei to get less screen time, and the plots revolve around the core 3 bladers, Ryuga, and the new kids on the block, with Masamune, Tsubasa, and Yu as relevant, but supporting in the grand scheme of things. I do not inherently see that as a negative thing, even though I can argue that how Kenta, Yu, and Benkei were treated and could have had more work put into their characterizations and character arcs. But going from the first generation to the second generation, I could see why that would be an issue for some people getting in. That being said, while I think all the Burst protagonists after Vault have the title of the most overhated protagonist, it's probably a tie between him and Kamen as the most hated. I'm completely over the hatred for Gingka as a protagonist, especially in Fusion. The main argument against him is that he just yells Blader Spirits for wins, but fighting Spirit pushing you to win fights was something established way long ago in the original Beyblade series. Like what? Did you think Max held back Tyson's Galaxy Storm without sheer willpower and pushing his defense to its absolute limits? Like, he's actually had to figure out how to counter his opponent's techniques and strategies like Hikaru's, Kyoya's, Kenta. He developed special moves to help him, and even in cases like Full Power to Stormbringer, he had to perfect it, and also, he's lost to 3 people in Season 1. Ryuga in a case where a Rage power-up is presented as a bad thing, Yu was just something no one could prepare for at the time, and Phoenix was actively trying to get him to live up to his potential. And ironically, or just as fittingly, he did manage to defeat them in reverse order. He figured out how to bait Phoenix to be open for Stormbringer. He narrowly defeated Yu, and Ryuga was juiced up on negative emotions from powers that he stole, but Gingka himself was able to gather the spirits of his allies and survive enough to beat him. And even in Masters and Fury, let's not pretend he was perfect either. He eventually lost to Masamune while struggling to control Galaxy Pegasus, would have lost to the Shine had Masamune not stepped in, got bodied with the rest of the team barring Tsubasa by Excalibur, and Argo and Phoenix blindsided him with a surprise attack. I'll get to that in a moment, but while I did say before, and I still agree that Gingka needed more special moves after Master and Fury, especially in his fight against Kyoya, let's not pretend he wasn't struggling in his other fights against the Cheyenne, Julian, Damien, and Faust. And as for Fury, he did lose to Ryuga and Aguma, but he's also mentoring Yuki and did have his plotlines trying to get the other legendary bladers to a side. Plus, everything involving Nemesis was a team effort at the end of the day, so I think the criticism against him is really unfair. But yeah, the Metal Saga had a nasty habit of just forgetting certain people have special moves. I'll talk about this in later detail, but for example, Meteor Shower Attack was only used once by Gingka, Benkei, and Kyoya only used Maximum Stampede and Furious Blast Shot in the show once. Yes, I know Kyoya also did it in the movie again, but still, that's 2 times out of 152 episodes. There's also a discrepancy in the amount of special moves everyone has. Like Gingka, Kyoya, Benkei, Tsubasa, and Yu only have about like 3 to 5 special moves per blade. Ryuga has at least 2, but he's already overpowered, so I'm not mad in that regard. Meanwhile, Kenta and Masamune only have 1 until Fury, and Masamune only gets that from his combination with King, and while Hikaru is not a main character, just a support, she's on the bottom of all their heroes and allies with special moves outside of Phoenix. Like, Teru and Hiyoma have more than her. And I like Teru. Speaking of which, I'd agree that you got snubbed, but how much is up for debate? Personally, I'd say the issue is that in Masters, he didn't have a proper arc for himself. You could say Lavushka, but part of the problem, which I also have to address in another video, is that some of the characters that were made up for the anime that weren't in the manga, so instead of getting Beyblades based off new constellations, they got older Beyblades with different fusion wheels. But in terms of Team Russia, in the manga, we didn't even get to see them fight. They kind of just skipped over it. And only Lyra and Aleski were on the team. And given that they were cheating, at least sympathetic for their reasons, you did learn about being more creative, but when you compare it to the other three, he didn't get a new special move, he didn't have some big growth or new skill he could exploit later, and even in the tag matches that he participates in with Tsubasa, he's always a second fiddle and is basically trying to use his specials to help them out in an advantage or hold it back while Tsubasa is dealing with the dark power. And in the Garcia's arc, he's the first one to get blindsided by them and bullied so hard that they're easily able to take him out. So when they actually participate in the tournament, he gets sniped out by Enzo, even though at full power, he probably could have beaten at least almost all of them. I think that the Brazilian arc really should have been his time to shine. Like, let Gingka and Masamune get hurt and they go first. Then Tsubasa deals with Ian and then have you overcome Argo. And gets a new technique where you overcome the weakness to attacks that everyone's been able to exploit up to that point. That being said, I am glad he returned in Fury to help out, especially with Titi. And alongside him, Tsubasa and Masamune, they were able to damage Nemesis, but he could have had a bit better treatment compared to the other two. That being said, I am getting really tired of people arguing again who should and shouldn't be a legendary blader in Fury. Because all it comes down to is people just talking about anyone not named Jinga, Kyoya, Ryuga, Kenta, and maybe King. And then we're placing them with characters from season 1 and 2 that people wanted. To be honest, I get why this is a thing. People just want to see their favorite characters be important in the final arc of the series. But I feel like people don't recognize that in order to do so, you would have to swap out 3 characters who either brainwash or willingly chose against the fight against the heroes in Chris, Aguma, Dynamis. Then find 3 bladers related to King, Yuki, and Titi that had to deal with wanting to find their potential in life, being a newcomer and someone already interested in astrology that learned about Nemesis to get to Jinga in the first place, or being a shy kid too afraid to get into the conflict in the first place, since the legendary bladers are all united by the fact that they were chosen, but the whole point of Fury was about how they each approach that path differently and how some may not have the most beneficial path compared to the others. But not only do you have to make sure that the past character fits into the role, but also has to fit seamlessly, while also having character development lingering that could be used from development. If I had any characters from the first 2 seasons I could personally see within that role, it would either be Sora. Well, I wouldn't want this one. Ryutaro for Dynamis would be something people would argue would make more sense with the Destiny theme. Then Damien in place of Chris, Hikaru in place of Aguma. But again, Aguma has ties to Balin Temple. Chris has a more sympathetic backstory. But in reality, if the show was just properly 51 episodes instead of 27, onwards only being 11 minutes, we'd probably had more time in development and focus for the legendary bladers that clearly needed more screen time. But I do like the idea of the Nemesis bladers. It's just that since they're basically henchmen instead of those with actual ties to the star fragments related to Nemesis, they're ultimately just a wasted opportunity who I wish we got to learn more about. Anyway, script's getting long, so let me just a few other factors. Look, I'm not mad about how Kyoya reacted in season 3, since people kind of forget Aguma was pushing his buttons about him being a follower. Even though I do understand why people dislike it, it kind of led to him fighting Titi and Yu, which kind of ended up with all the legendary bladers being united in one place. So I'm not mad about it, though I won't disagree if you find that a bad writing decision. And Ryuga's fate actually makes sense to me. While he was more helpful in season 2, he was still mostly focused on trying to stop Hades Incorporated for basically using him and a Dark Nebula as a pawn. And this is the guy that was willing to cause collateral damage and injure Jinga's father in the flashback to season 1. So in season 3, him refusing to help because he thinks he's the only one that needed to take down Rago is sort of fitting, given that he went from greed to arrogance to pride. And if he didn't die, we wouldn't have got him accepting Kenta as his successor. But I feel like people who enjoy Ryuga need to remember that he was a flawed character that made a lot of mistakes and was a terrible person in the beginning. There are some battles in Metal that basically rely on just huge explosions in place of actual choreography and strategy, which can get old at times. I also don't like how some of the tag battles can ultimately either have a lack of teamwork that basically dials down to, hey, let's use our special moves together and see what happens. Ironically, Benkei and Demure versus Yu and Tsubasa kind of avoided this trap all entirely. I think everyone ranging from Tsubasa, Julian, and Kyoya being able to either handle losing to the dark power or overcoming their own mental issues. The writers really should have allowed Hikaru to do the same thing, but even then Hikaru was poorly treated, and we should have really had some closure with her and her mom. Wait, I didn't have any space to talk about Shogun Steel. Oh well, next time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know if there's anything I didn't mention, because there are some topics in this video I could really bring up in a future section, or could be its own long video. But thanks for watching this one, and next time I will try to get the Superman video out after this one is done. Thanks for watching, and BIP Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.